Away. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I am fine. I'm super duper.
Excellent. So
So,
take it away.
hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another installment of Our Diversity Unites Us. This promises to be a very enlightening and a very educational session today with our panel, and I'm really excited that the G100 Oneness and Wisdom Wing is partnering with the G100 Positive Masculinity Wing. It's always great to meet our colleagues and engage with them. So I'm really excited about it. Thank you to all of you who are joining us from all over the world. We thank you for your time. And of course, we thank you, the panelists, for joining us on this session today. So just jumping quickly into a little bit of a background, a little bit of an overview. Our unites us, actually. The initiative started earlier this year, and I must say it's been doing well to encourage really sound conversations that are of importance where topics are concerned. So we're really excited about that. And just a little overview as to G100 and G100 Oneness and Wisdom. It was founded by our dear Dr. Harbeen Aurora Rai, and we are so thankful for bringing this international community together. And what exactly do we do? Well, we enlighten, we energize, we educate, we encourage, we enhance, we execute. It's really all about women equality, but also peace and collaborating and coming together with one another so that we can not only affect our local communities, but also the global communities. So join us today as we take a deep dive with the G100 Positive Masculinity Wing. I am your host today, Nicole Farrell. I am the country chair for Trinidad and Tobago. And for those of you who are not familiar, it is a beautiful twin island republic in the Caribbean. We neighbor Venezuela. Just a little fun fact for you there. So today, my moderator is our darling global chair of G100 Oneness and Wisdom, Miss Jennifer Randive. I will pass you over to her for her to share some information. On to you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
You're
So
welcome.
thank you everyone for joining in. And if you haven't yet started joining us, now's the time because we're
Yes.
live, we're kicking, and we're here to make a difference. And it's such a pleasure to be part of G100. Uh, it's so cool to be able to meet different people from different parts of the world. What do you say, Nicole? Isn't it exciting to actually meet wonderful people from all over?
Absolutely. I have
Um,
been with G100 for over a year. It's been fantastic.
yeah, and me getting to meet all you lovely people from across the world. It's so exciting, but more exciting, I think it's the G100 mission million that we're talking about being spread all over the world and actually creating such an impact with everything that we are doing. But essentially, uh, why we started G100 Oneness and Wisdom and this particular project was to really get to know these amazing country chairs. We have 100 of them. Oh my God. And each one of them has got this awesome responsibility and creativity to be able to shift the dial, to shift the narrative, to change things. And for me, change is constant. And when we have changing is a choice, this is what it is that we are here to voice today. And who do we have as our amazing visiting global community today? G100, the positive masculinity team, is here with us. And I'm so looking forward to what they have to share. But before we start introducing them, Nicole, I'm going to actually read a bit about what it is they are all about because everyone was so inquisitive. What is this about? And I said, well, I'm going to keep you in suspense till we come into action. So here it is. Why not have fun? Keep people in suspense so they all get flabbergasted with the amusement that they're going to be
Da-da-da-da.
receiving. Yeah, so here we go. So we are here today to explore the wisdom that can empower men and women to co-create authentic harmony through the perspective of a woman-centric journey. The mission of G100 Positive Masculinity Wing aligns and expands on the G100 mission for gender equality among women and men to a new level of language mastery. With conversation and language mastery techniques, these are designed to embrace and enrich men's lives as well as 100% inclusive engagement that establishes the value of women as women. In a world economy with social norms that not always too good for women and girls, gender-based violence, toxic behavior, harassment, marginalization of women is still occurring across the world to various degrees of trauma. We promote the idea of heart-centered leadership and the path that authentic harmony, wisdom brings results. Now, this is what it is that G100 Positive Masculinity imbibes in the work that they do across the world. Now, I am so excited to actually welcome on board everyone. So I'm going to pass it on to you now, Nicole. Take
Mhm.
over with introducing these amazing people that we've
Yes.
got waiting to join us. So take it away, honey.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, for sharing that information. And now, folks, we move on to our esteemed list of panelists. First up, we have Dr. Pauline Crawford. She is actually the global chair for Positive Masculinity. She is a vision officer, an international speaker, author, and she has also been very instrumental in conceptualizing and designing programs for organizations and individuals all around the world. So I pass it over to you, Dr. Crawford. You can introduce yourself and tell us a little more.
Well, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Jennifer. It's
You're
absolutely different.
welcome.
Oh, it's still. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
It's delightful to be here, and we're going to have some fascinating exploration. I love to be an adventurer, but one of the other things I love is conversation, and that for me is the essence of how we empower men and women. So I've loved conversation all my life, and I love harmony, and I think that the mission to create authentic harmony really appeals to men, and that's one of the reasons we now have 15 country chairs and each chair is having wisdom circles. So we're very aligned to oneness of wisdom. So we have wisdom circles. And what's really important is that these are conversations without judgment, without anger, and without coercion or any form of abuse or violence. So in our purpose, which is to engage the world in healthy living, healthy being, that's where we're at. So I am delighted to be introducing also my panelists with me because this has been a journey of joy, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Absolutely.
And
Pauline.
just a
Thank
point
you
you might
so
notice,
much.
I come from London, but I live in Las Vegas. That's my uniqueness.
The city that never sleeps, really. So thank you very much, Dr. Crawford. And moving on to our second panelist, we have a gentleman in our midst, Mr. Ferozepira. He is the global denim partner for the G100 Positive Masculinity. He has an international background in banking, and he's actually a retiree from who was a corporate executive. And he also has 20 plus years in the public service. So, Mr. Peera, I will pass it over to you. You can tell us a little more about yourself.
Hi, Nicole. Hi, everyone.
Hello,
Call me Firoz. I
Firoz.
feel more
No
comfortable with
problem.
that. Yes, as you said, I've had a fairly exciting 33-year career with large companies in banking and information technology. But for the last 20 years, I've been working as a volunteer with many like-minded men and women around the world on initiatives to make the world healthier, better educated, more just, more equitable, and more peaceful. And I believe very strongly that to make progress in the areas that I mentioned, we must unleash the full potential of both men and women so they can bring together the best of their unique capabilities, talents, and perspectives, because we are different and we bring different things to solve problems and meet challenges. And for men and women to work together in unison, in harmony, to change our world for the better. So that's where I am.
Absolutely.
So wonderful. So refreshing to hear that. Oh my God. Really?
So refreshing to hear it from a man, to be quite honest.
Believe me, there are more and more of us like that. We are
Yes.
getting enlightened. It may seem slow, but that is the way things are moving. So I'm very optimistic.
Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you very much, Firoz. And moving on to our next panelist, we have Miss Phumza Dyani. She is the country chair for South Africa for the G100 Positive Masculinity. She is a prominent professional in the ICT industry, and she's also been very instrumental in key community projects and is a global speaker. So I will pass it on to her now for her to share a little more about her background and maybe even some of her work. Take it away.
I think she is not here right now. Would you like to go on to the other lady?
Okay, sure.
That seems behind her. Can
No
we do
problem.
Adriana?
Okay, so let's move on to Adriana Rosales. She is the country chair for Mexico within G100 Positive Masculinity. Now, she has been quite busy with her writing. She's an 8-time author, okay, and is well respected in the literary world. She's also an esteemed member of the Forbes Coaches Council. So, Adriana, let's hear from you.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Yes. So my name is Adriana Rosales. Like Nicole said, I am currently the G100 chair for Mexico in the Positive Masculinity group. I'm also the founder of the Latinas 100 initiative to get 1 million Latinos published by 2030. Our primary goal is to eliminate the barriers to entry as it pertains to publishing aspiring authors. Throughout, we do yearly anthologies, and currently we have a series that we're working on. We're amplifying marginalized voices and empowering both women and men to share their story and leave their legacy for the next generation. In essence, we are writing our own history. I'm also a seasoned corporate executive, both in the telecommunications and finance industry. This is what I did in my prior life. I currently had my own publishing company, RMP Studio, where I help writers all over the world to publish for the first time. I'm passionate about helping aspiring writers to write their life story and help them make an impact in the world. We've also helped hundreds of writers publish for the first time and leave their lasting impact in the world, leaving their legacy for the next generation, which is our primary goal at our publishing company.
Awesome.
That is awesome.
Totally awesome,
That is
yeah.
so very awesome.
Thank
Great.
you. And that's great work that you also work with those first-time authors, because you do need guidance in those areas. So
Absolutely.
Awesome work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Adriana. And moving on to Clara Goldie. Now, I heard this name and I said, oh, this sounds like a Hollywood name for some reason. I don't know why. but Clara Goldie, she is the country chair for the United Kingdom within G100 Positive Masculinity. She has been internationally recognized for interior designing. She's a professional speaker and also an energy medicine
intuitive.
Intuitive. Yes, I couldn't even understand my own handwriting there. Yeah, she's an energy medicine intuitive, and I think she will shed some light as to what exactly that entails. So I will pass it over to you, Miss Hollywood, Clara Goldie.
Thank you for such a lovely welcome, Nicole, and thank you,
You're
Jennifer.
welcome.
It's a blessing to be here, and as you said rightly, Jennifer, to really be able to share out in the world. So I think my journey started as a very young woman, and probably very young actually, where I didn't like the stereotypes being displayed, and I couldn't do what I wanted to do because I'm never enough, blah, blah, blah. We all know those stories. So I decided to create my own business. So from a very young woman, set about doing that. And then on my path, I discovered, because I had to do the training and do the inner work, that I was actually an energy medicine intuitive, and that I could show up and help other people release from limiting mindsets and blocks that were mostly imposed on others about what they could and couldn't do. So I kind of realized that. And so 20 years ago, I set about designing a really beautiful program that does the inner work and helps people bridge the gap to the outer world so that they can become embodied in love and compassion and harmony and still be in their soft power and really create the lives that they want. And that's really both for men and women, because as I've discovered with the UK circles, which I'll get into in a bit, men actually want this as much as women. Surprise, surprise. Thank you for having me anyway. Thank you.
You are most welcome. You are most welcome. So now I will pass it to Jennifer as we do our deep dive today.
Yes, now that's going to be interesting. We have Phumza, who is going to try and come on a little later. But in the meantime,
okay,
I'm going to be inviting Dr. Pauline to have her answer some of those amazing questions that we've got ready for her. Just a moment. Now, I've heard so much. I actually have spoken to Pauline quite a lot. And forgive me for being so casual by calling you Pauline when I have to say Dr. Pauline Crawford. But the funny thing is this, that we've had some interesting conversations, Pauline and myself, and I've got to share with everyone, this amazing woman, Dr. Crawford, is a leading expert in facilitating amazing change and collaboration, all about change-focused conversations between leaders to create a successful future. Now, all of us want that, all of us. But let us see how we can actually get this. And her unique approach blends logic and emotion. Oh my God, don't we all want to have some of that? Enabling people to transform without compromising authenticity. Now that there is the icing on the cake. Without letting our authenticity out of the window, we're actually going to be able to come together using logic and emotion and turn things around. So without further ado, Dr. Pauline has also said that her mission is to crack the leadership code using the power of authentic harmony, setting the scene of heart-centered leadership to expand the value that men and women bring to business. Take it away, Dr. Pauline. I'm going to put you on the, let me just see.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. I think it's a pretty hard nut to crack, but I think that we have come to a stage in our world where we need to address this. We have had over 100 years since the vote for women. We've been cracking the nut for a long time. And my focus has been very much in the corporate world over the last 30 years in the UK, and then in Malaysia, and now in the US, and also online across the world. And we still have a lot of blocks and barriers to men and women really understanding each other. So I always say to my clients, you know, the first journey of your life is actually understanding yourself. But the superpower is actually understanding other people who are not like you. And potentially men and women truly don't really understand each other. We might laugh at that. Obviously, we have lots of wisdom circles. We have lots of conversations about how to understand each other. But the important thing is that we need to listen and care, and also understand how we could create a new landscape. This is where I say, if we crack the walnut of life open, and actually a walnut looks very like a brain, if we actually crack that walnut open between men and women and have open conversations without judgment, what we discover is that we actually have more similarities in terms of our values and our principles and our desire to have a more healthy, happy and productive life in the corporate world and in our family life and in our community life. So that's really the core principle is, do people want harmony, or do they want to keep on going in the old world of control, authority, dare I say, greed, corruption? We know there's violence in the world. We know there's abuse in the world at many, many levels. But we want to actually look at how do we go beyond that, because we spend a lot of time in our world saying, let's stop this, let's stop the violence, let's stop the bad stuff. And I agree we need to, but we also need to go towards a new conversation where we can all step into it. So when we say looking at a women-centric journey, it's not saying women can control the world. We want to nurture the world. We want to invite men to be partners with us. And that's why our wing is so important, because when Dr. Harbin came to me and said, would you be in charge of the wing for positive masculinity? I thought, wow, yeah, this is great. You know, we want men to be positive. And actually the backdrop to this is that there's a very big movement called positive masculinity among presidents in Africa who are saying we are going to stand up and create healthy-minded, positive role models in men who don't continue the gender-based violence that we know has been there. If you come into the corporate world, in the corporate world, we have also harassment and things going wrong. So the goal is that when we crack the leadership code, we're actually doing it with love. If you like, we're doing it with oneness.
Yeah.
And that's really important, that we get into the conversation together, but, and we need to respect everybody's individuality. So people come to leadership in different ways. Not all men are the same, not all women are the same, but we know there are some fundamental principles between men and women that make us different. And that is beautiful. So one of the things I always educate my corporate clients with is that differences are fantastic. They are not difficult. Differences misunderstood can be difficult. And that's where we need some alignment on principles and values. So we talk about heart-centered leadership. It's as simple as honoring each other, respecting each other, but also recognizing that we're different. So some people are short on conversation, some people are long on conversation, some people are introverts, some are extroverts. So I designed a landscape that we can all create a new language mastery. And that's what we do in all our wisdom circles across the world. We invite people to come and to not have any judgment. How do you do that? You come from your experience. And I know when you talk to the other panelists I brought from my wing, we'll discover different experiences. So my Denim partner, Firoz, has had different experiences. He's a man. We have different experiences with Clara in the energy. We're all different, but differences are beautiful. And that's really what I want to, the key point I want to get over. If we're going to create harmony, we have to hear the voices coming in together. So that's the point of cracking the leadership code. Sounds like it's hard, but once we open it, I believe that everybody gets into a space of joy and kindness and compassion, because they can be who they are, not pretend to be somebody else.
Authenticity. The name of the game, authenticity, which is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Pauline. And it's so insightful to actually see that each one of us can actually play a significant role in actually making this possible. And it's not about us having to separate. We actually have to be that inclusiveness to actually come together to create far greater. I keep saying that over and over
Yes,
again. Each one is so unique, yet brings
absolutely. And just
look
say,
for
I think women can take a great role in this, but really understanding men. I've interviewed a lot of men in my research and in my work, and a lot of men say, we really love working with women, but they're very complex. Please keep life simple.
which is true. Which is true. Thank you for sharing that. It's really insightful. Our next amazing speaker, and the question goes to Mr. Ferozepira. Thank you so much for being here. It's so exciting to actually have a gentleman amongst us who drives the same passion as all of us. So you're not the only one, Firoz. I'm quite sure there must be a whole lot of people there, but I'm thanking you for taking the lead to help people to see that, you know what, there's no harm in us showing up. We're here to be the change in action. So Mr. Ferozepira, you have had considerable experience in strategy development, large scale change management to assist others to achieve transformation, change, and improve lives. As an active Rotarian, you live by its ethos of service above self. Wow, that's awesome. Having served as district governor and the Rotary Foundation advocate, I have a question for you. What is it that you see as the current state of affairs? Are men and women actually working in harmony together, Firoz? Has this endeavor reached a critical mass to effect positive change in the world?
Yeah, that's a big question. And the answer is a combination of yes and no. As I see it, the current state of affairs is far from satisfactory because men have been the gatekeepers for so long in terms of what the female half of humanity has been able to do. But that gate is lifting. And so as I look at it, are we at close to a tipping point? Not yet. But on the positive front, if you look at the landscape, more girls and women are getting the education they aspire to. Girls are denied access to schools in Afghanistan, of course, and that's terrible. But everywhere else in the world, they have that freedom. And in many countries, the number of women in university exceeds the number of men. So that is great. The number of women in the professions keeps growing. The same for women reaching the highest echelons of the business world and running multinational institutions and around the world. You
Yes.
mentioned that I'm in Rotary. Last year, we had our first woman president. Rotary was founded in 1905, and this is the first time we had a woman president. And in the year after next, there'll be another woman as president. That, to me, is progress. All right. And the number of organizations that are recognizing the benefits of diversity, equity, inclusion is growing, and more of them are putting in goals to make their organizations far more inclusive. So, and then if you look at some of the UN reports, the number of women in key political positions where they can really influence policy is estimated at 10%. That has stayed the same for 25 years. So we're not moving fast enough there. And it leaves considerable room for growth. So we need more women in higher political positions because of the simple fact that experience tells us that women leaders bring new perspectives and new ideas. They tend to think long term. They are perhaps less reckless than men in their decision making and more oriented to peacemaking, which I think is so important. So the other thing that I think there is proof of is that with women leaders, public services improve dramatically because there's greater concern for the needs of children, other women, and marginalized groups. So all of the stuff that I mentioned to me is due to the greater collaboration, the lifting of the gates, because now we're beginning to use the best talent, regardless of gender, to think and work in harmony. And to me, that's great. But if I were to highlight the biggest problem that we face, it is really the lack of progress in the social norms and attitudes about women. We, primarily the men, continue to vastly underestimate the capabilities of women and their unique skills and perspectives. This becomes a major constraint to the opportunities that women are given and their rights in society. And for too long, that role has been compartmentalized and restricted by rules mostly made by men. So this is a pervasive worldwide problem, more so in some cultures than others. But as I see it, it is these deep-rooted, these deep-rooted social changing norms, which, from a male perspective, are our biggest challenge, right? That's why I think we need to reach out to the men and the boys to change, to re-educate and change their mindset. And because you mentioned reaching a critical mass, a tipping point. Well, that won't happen until there is this reawakening among the male side of the world, and women in some cases, to change the societal norms that exist today. So we really, as I see it, need to continue to build the scope and scale of what we're trying to do. Have the story that we want to tell others, change the attitudes and behaviors of men and boys, especially in certain regions, create more of that harmony where men realize that bringing women into their discussion groups and decision making brings new talents, unique talents, so that they can together manage our local and global challenges, of which we all know we have so many. So, as I look at trends and so on, we have the Sustainable Development Goal, number 5, which talks about gender equity by 2030. Will we make it? I don't know. But I really hope that we will do all the things that accelerate the kind of cultural change that we need to rethink about our attitudes about women and their capabilities and the value that they add to society. So, this is a fundamental rethink that I think both men and women need to create amongst the rest of the population. And the more scope and scale of people who think that way will get us to that reawakening, that tipping point.
Yeah, which is an amazing thing. I think to be able to have more conversations, Firoz, for people to get together, to come together, to create something different. I think we are here to shift that narrative, because I think G100 is all about actually making the shift and the change.
Absolutely.
And I truly believe that this way of operating, of being on a hamster wheel, trying to do the same thing, getting a different result, ain't working no more. So we are here to actually shift and change the dynamics of this conversation. And I think we need to have more of this, not only just having the conversation, but getting together to out-create the status quo, because it's driving everyone insane, yet no one is doing anything about it. And I think we're here to actually shift that needle into going forward. Yes.
And as you mentioned, change has always been slow throughout history.
Yeah.
But when you get enough momentum, it'll happen suddenly. It'll surprise us.
Yes,
so
exactly.
What
And I
we're
think
doing
we're getting
is
there.
very doable. We're not, pushing a wall here. This is possible. We just need to have enough people involved, enough people talking about it, and realizing the value of both genders working together.
It's true. Thank you so much for your amazing insight. Very much appreciated, Firoz. Truly do. Thank you. Next amazing lady joining us is going to be Miss Clara. How are you doing, Clara?
I'm doing very well, and I'm so excited to be here with all this amazing group. And as you say, the G100 is a phenomenal ball of energy that's gathering momentum.
Yeah, I like to call it the G100 movement because we're here to move everything that is stuck and is going like, constricting us from actually
Yes,
showing up as
exactly.
in our brilliance. So
Absolutely.
Clara, I love the introduction that I heard, but to add to your repertoire and then to
Yes.
question it is what it is that I love to do. Okay. So Clara, your passion for helping people to awaken what's hidden and support
Yes.
them to recognize
Yeah.
the value of their individuality
Yeah.
and the gifts they possess.
Yeah.
I mean, you help people and help them to and remind people that they have the code sitting within them to
Yeah.
reclaim their passions, their personal
Yeah.
powers, and their creativity. Now, I've heard of that. I do that myself, so it's going to be an interesting thing when we can actually come together to create some magic there.
Yeah.
But I want your perspective of with the work that you're doing, are people truly awakening to their hidden power? And what level of engagement does that bring about to create the harmonious interaction between men and women? I mean, how does that actually happen? So we all can get awakened, but are we really coming into having that harmonious conversation to get
Yeah.
there, to do better,
Yeah.
create, out-create? That's what I'd love to hear
Exactly.
from you.
Yeah, well, it's a big question. I'm going to try and
Mm,
condense it as best as I can. And I see the question in two parts, really. And I think the first part, just for the audience's benefit, is when people do awaken to their hidden power, oh boy, it really does bring another level of engagement into the
mm,
pot. And as we know, it's a constant practice, it's a constant commitment that you make to yourself on an individual level. And I know from a little girl, I made that commitment to myself. And I'm sure when I speak to other people around the world and through my wisdom circles, they say the same thing. There's this little
mm,
whisper of something that's inside all of us. Everybody has this, I like to call it our eternal spark, our energy. And it's that part of you that we call intuition, and it's your guiding light. And I think, just to lay context, that when we get, and Firoz very neatly went into it, when we get submerged under other people's limitations, other people have limitations of what they think we can and can't do, and especially as women, that is really quite strong. And I've learned that these stereotypes and conditions are not true. Very often they're not true. And so I think there's this soul prompt. I know with your inner work, you
mm,
probably talk about these inner prompts, this constant nudge, this inner whispering of, hang on, that doesn't feel right. I mean, as a young woman, I was like, well, this world that's out here isn't the world that I'm computing on an internal level. And I think what happens to people when they make big shifts, and there's examples of this in movies. You've got Sigourney Weaver with Working Girl when she meets the toxic, she's the toxic feminine who plays the Wall Street executive, and she
mm,
steals her secretary's stuff. You've got Tina Turner, probably the most famous example of enough's enough, Ike Turner, I'm out of this marriage. So I think, unfortunately, there can be extreme circumstances where you just, I'm not staying here anymore. It goes against all my grain as a human being. And I think that, we decide we're going to break the cycle. And sometimes this part of us, needs nurturing, because it can take, some people can do it
mm,
instantaneously, and others it can take many decades. But the key thing is that you see the cycle and you're willing to break it.
mm.
So that leads me really neatly to your second part of the question, which is what level of engagement then does that bring about to create a harmonious engagement? Because I think once you see it, there has to be a better way. And it's that kind of understanding that when we want to become the change that we would like to see, and I know that's a very overused expression, but it's a very good expression because we start to explore, and I like to explore inwards as to what else is possible. And I know when I talk to both men and women in my circles, when they've played the game of, well, it's always been done like this, so we're always, you know, we're going to carry on, and then they've gone, actually, this isn't serving us. And men have said, you know, all sorts of things about, you know, we don't want to be driven on and da 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 da, and there must be a different way. And I think for me, that harmonious connection comes about when, and I've always said, you know, do unto me as I would do unto you. So if I treat you that way, I would like to be treated that way back, you know. So I think when we start to recognize the harmony that we have, and what I want to say particularly to women who are listening is when you have the courage to actually be authentic in who you are, you don't have to behave like a man. Who wants to behave like a man? We've got this female, you know, physiology. So, and men the same, you know, when they show up, and I just want to share that in my own work as an interior designer, I work with a lot of men, a lot of teams. And, you know, the beauty is that when women show up with their unique gifts and talents, what we bring is a kind of fluidity, and we make life easier for a project or a flow of something that perhaps couldn't happen before. So I want to say to women, if you're holding yourself back, don't do it, because we are at a very exciting time in our history. If you don't show up, it's not going to happen. So you've got to find a way to show up. And, you know, I think
that's really something that we are all working towards, Clara. And I think I'd like to bring you back because we have a couple of questions, I think, that people would like to ask. So I would love to bring Adriana on now. Hi, Adriana. Thank you for your patience and your presence. Quite honestly.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate you.
So, Adriana, I have seen that you have accomplished so many different things, but one of them has been through your Latinas 100 anthology book series. You aspire to encourage 1 million Latinos to become first-time authors by the year 2030. This initiative is designed to empower marginalized voices and diversify the literary landscape. You mentioned you have conducted extensive amounts of research on the state of women's voices in Latin America, particularly Mexico. To the collection of hundreds of stories, many things have been unveiled. The persisting underrepresentation and lack of support for women in the country. I have a question, though, for you. The question is, through the sharing of these stories that you have with all these amazing women, what impactful change are you seeing right now? And do you think that's sustainable?
Thank you, Jennifer. I love that question. And before I delve deeper into the piece of, is it sustainable? I want to share a few things that I discovered and really started to understand when I was doing my research, in particular with the country of Mexico. In 1996, the lawmakers in Mexico recommended that 30% of all congressional candidates be women. And then 6 years later, they mandated it and they raised it to 40. And in 2014, they set it to 50. So according to an NPR report, the country of Mexico has half of Congress now female, which I think is wonderful. And 7 of the country's 32 governors are women. This is partly due to the changing attitudes, but also it was federally mandated. It was mandated that there would be gender equality. In 2019, lawmakers went even further, passing a constitutional amendment mandating gender parity in everything, something that is unprecedented in Latin America, probably in the world. And as of July 2023, there's a record number of women in high positions in government in Mexico. In the lower house of Congress, the chamber deputies, women hold 49% of the seats, while in the upper Senate, women hold 50% of the seats, which makes Mexico a country with the highest proportion of women in national legislature in the world, which I find fascinating because I grew up Latina in the United States and was always back and forth to Mexico, and the narrative was very, very different in years past. And so I find it encouraging, and I find that the country is moving in the right direction, and I find that it's a positive thing, and we're moving forward with with those new changes. I also love what Farrell said earlier, which he brilliantly stated. Men are still the gatekeepers. And I find that to be interesting because it's coming from a man saying, hey, he's acknowledging that men are still the gatekeepers. And this is what I have found to be true, because I've been one of those publishers that's had my boots, out in the streets, if you will. I've been helping women in Latin America primarily publish their stories, and have come across hundreds of stories where this is true. Men are still the gatekeepers. Even women that have published, that hold the highest level of education, are still struggling to move ahead. So I find that although there is this amazing push, if you will, or initiative for the country to move forward, and you can see it in the representation, when you look at the common folk, or when you look at the insides of small communities, the narrative is different. And back to your question on whether or not this publishing is a sustainable thing, when a woman or a man, because we're also publishing men, when women and men publish, it is a compounding effect. It has a compounding effect because you may publish, now, but 3 or 4 years down the road, it could affect you in your career, or whatever it is that you're doing. And for this particular question, I wanted to share three quick stories that I've come across to relay the kind of impact and the kind of sustainable impact that we've had through helping women publish. One of the stories is, when we started the initiative 3 years ago, I had a young woman who is an attorney and had to stop working. She's a single parent and had to stop working because she had developed cancer. And she really had no means of making any kind of income and was really struggling. She had, her son was quite small, and she wanted to share her story in one of the anthologies that we do. She shared her story, and she became involved in the Latinas 100 community. And within the community, I saw her go from someone who was really defeated to someone who was able to use this platform to share her story with the world. And in that, I saw how she blossomed. And thankfully, she's still with us now, three volumes after, and is engaged, has been one of our editors, has won awards for best essays, and has been able to create these anthologies and these publications into a business.
Wonderful.
So
wonderful.
And the second story is a story of one of our writers who began writing with us, who has a 37-year career as a elementary and high school teacher and always wanted to be a professor at a university. She's in her mid-50s, and we taught her how to publish, how to work with the printing presses, how to make her publishing career, if you will, into a business. And she was able to publish 4 books. And within that time, she also achieved her dream of becoming a professor at one of the universities. Although she didn't have the qualifications to work at that particular university because of her training originally when she was coming up, I mean, over 30 years ago, they didn't have that particular certificate she needed. But I encouraged her to apply for the position anyways. And sure enough, when she applied for this position at this prestigious university, they hired her. And the number one reason why she was hired was because she had published 4 books. And most of the
Yes.
professors hadn't published any.
Which is really interesting. It's very true. But my question also would actually go into how are the men actually being impacted by this amazing work that these women are doing?
Yes.
I mean,
So
there a
right in the
shift,
middle of
there a
our
change.
so right in the middle of our initiative, I started getting calls from hundreds of men, and they're all, well, why is it just Latinas? We want to be part of it too. And I was so surprised that I didn't particularly reach out to any men, but the men were calling me. And I thought, wow, this is way bigger than I could have imagined. And so we have these incredible men within the community, so much so that this year we decided to do a men's series called the Latinos 100 Men Series. And we have all these beautiful stories of men who are helping and empowering women to write and to flourish and to blossom. And we get to, through these anthologies now with men, listen to the men that are advocating for women, that
Which
are
is
sharing
amazing.
women's stories.
That's an amazing, that's what it is that is so required. So what an amazing thing you're doing. So we start off with the women, and then the men want to, because the men are there.
Yes.
They've tried everything. Women have tried everything, and now the narrative is changing. And I'm so pleased that we are having this conversation, all of us together, because it's about time that we actually move the needle, and it's moving for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
To be able to bring things to a different level. Thank you very much, Adriana, for actually. There's a lovely comment that says, "Love this." Focus was on women, and then men wanted to join in. Isn't that amazing? So can you see? It's not always about having to fight. There's nothing to fight about, quite honestly.
Yes.
It's more about, instead of fighting, what if you could be more inviting? And that's what it is you've been able to do as part of your work. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
that. Thank you so much. We have now Phumza, who's been able to join us. Thank you so much. Wow, we've been waiting for you to come. You took off, and now you're coming. You're going to do the grand finale, my dear. How are you?
I'm very
How
well,
are you?
thanks. How are you? I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing, Jennifer?
Wonderful. As Nicole is busy with doing something, so I'm going to change the. Oh, Nicole, you're here. Brilliant. Would you like to introduce this amazing woman?
Absolutely. Hello, Phumza. This is our quote unquote last panelist, Phumza Dyani. She's the country chair from South Africa within the G100 Positive Masculinity Wing. She is a prominent professional in the ICT industry and has also been very instrumental in key community projects and is also a global speaker. So I am going to throw it over one time for Phumza. Welcome, dear, and share a little bit about yourself for us. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nicole. And
You're welcome.
It's such an honor to be part of this conversation. So as you said, I am the G100 chair for South Africa. I'm based in Joburg, and my background is ICT space. In the ICT space, I've spent about 20 years in the space. And throughout my entire life, I've seen the space dominated by men. I mean, from about 15, 18 years back when I got into the ICT space. I mean, if you go to the conferences, Jennifer, you'd find mostly men. And if there were women, they had women dressed up in short skirts and being the sideline kind of role that women would play in the space, especially the technical aspects of the space. It was predominantly men. So whilst it was fascinating to have that ego of saying, I'm first in this industry, I'm amongst the first to break through into specific roles. That fallacy, it fell away very fast because you realize that when you are alone and you're isolated, your voice is not heard. Your voice disappears because no one can relate in the boardroom. So as my career grew and accelerated in the space, I pushed for more women to be around the table. So I started advocating for more women in the executive roles. I advocated for more women in the board roles in the ICT space, in policy formulation, and in all the other areas that women were not represented. So my presence here today is to tell everyone who is a woman to say, it does not have to take major strides. Sometimes bringing that voice onto the table with basic things. If you are in the board, ask, where are the women? If you are part of the product space, where is the female voice? Let's not go for the major things. Let's start from the basics. When you are there, it's not about you. It's not about being the first. It's about your positive contribution to a really like a more inclusive world with women involved.
Absolutely. I think that's the thing which takes me to asking the question of you, because I mean, the amount of work that you're doing, a global speaker, host of many topics, including technology infrastructure, emerging technologies, personal branding, and gender parity. It's so amazing to be able to bring all those and actually have gender parity actually as the underlying thing. So what are we shifting there? So my question to you is, what is your experience? Is it helping to achieve the gender parity and harmonious interactions? I know between men and women, because I know that we are trying very much to bring the ladies into the sphere that you're working in. But have you seen any distinctive changes where, like, you know, the creativity of a woman perhaps might add value to the technology of the left brain of the guy? So, have you seen anything actually being impacted? I'm quite sure that you must have. So, if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely, Jennifer. So I think what I'm starting to see with women is there is a lot of drive for purpose. So even if they get into spaces, I mean, the positive examples that I tend to have of women extending even the industry to supporting the social aspects of our environment, it's amazing. If you have women sitting around the table and talking about the impact we can have in this space, women will start bringing to the fore discussions about what about the women in the rural areas? What about the children? How about we use technology to create a more innovative and inclusive education system? So whilst in the past, I've had a lot of talk around these socially conscious kind of products and services, I'm seeing women pulling together, lobbying other women to really cause the change. They're not just talking.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I look in the past 2-3 years with more women networking and supporting to, to build socially responsible projects, I'm seeing a lot more action and tangible projects that are affecting people on the ground, that are affecting women, that are affecting children in rural areas. So that nurturing aspect of a woman is something that we should never lose, because I grew up in the ranks when the belief was that we had to be men. You got into the space and you felt that you not had until you start.
Yeah, I've thank you for that. Yeah, it's so true. But I think one of the things that we all should actually look at right now is, what if we did not have this thing? I'm going to bring people on now. Thank you for that. We're running out of time, so I'd like to bring everyone back on screen, because I have a question, and I think I speak for everyone who has tried to put 101 questions, but let me just bring everyone here. The thing that I have seen is, and maybe I'm completely wrong, so please tell me, is what do you all think would be the best possible way of stopping this competition between men and women? Why are we competing when we can be completing one another, literally?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Any views on that? Anyone, please go ahead.
I think I do think words are very powerful. We know from what Adriana's doing in publishing, everything that we've said, so articulate. Words make a difference. And in my experience, we've got stuck on the stop the violence. We got stuck on harassment. We're talking about negative things. If we could talk positive, in my experience, since I got the title of Positive Masculinity, I have to say that men respond extremely well to the idea of positive masculinity. And actually, we know that women also have positive masculinity. They respond very well to harmony, and so do women. So let's change the language. And given your title, Jennifer, Our Diversity Unites Us, let's also expand that with words like differences are beautiful, harmony, respect, love, all the things we know. But let's go to the green light. So in our wisdom circles, we invite people to say, what do you want to stop? What would you like to start? That's really important. Paint the future now.
Yeah,
I
I'd like
think,
to share.
Yeah, please go ahead. And quite honestly, I'm not concerned about going above time because I think this is a topic that requires hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. So please feel free to whatever.
Okay. Well, I would like to continue from Pauline. I joined Pauline's mission because I felt a very strong alignment and I loved what she was all about. And I felt like, well, we need more of this conversation in the world. It's going to help everybody. And I just want to share from my own perspective, because we all only have our own experiences, that one of the things I learned very early on is to really, when we imbibe our own, and you use that word imbibe, which I love, when we really imbibe who we are and our soft power as women, I think when we show up, knowing what we bring, our talents, our gifts, our experiences, if we're confident in that ability that we're showing up, there is no competition. I don't see it as being a competition. And in fact, when I work with men, obviously men and women, yes, of course, there's always a bit of ruffling up the feathers. Oh gosh, look, she's a female lead on the project. But actually, when they realize you're there to do the business, you're there to do the work, you leave everything else at home as they do, and you're showing up professionally. Generally speaking, there's a good camaraderie that happens. I mean, I've been very.
We have a question, Klara. It says from Anu. She's one of our country chairs, and she says, "How do we get women to not stand in the way of women's upliftment, be it due to
fear or competition?" Well, that's the thing. That's the way we do the work. And I actually really think with, people like Pauline and people like Adriana and Phumza and all of us who are way showers, what we're actually doing is we're pioneering a path for other women, and not only for women, but we're pioneering it for men.
For all of us, I think.
To answer that question, I was just going to say, to answer that question is you've got to be brave and courageous right now. And get the right tribe around you that love you, respect you, and that's
no
key.
matter what.
You've got to get your tribe around you.
I really think that the way that things are moving, if we were to stop looking at ourselves as male and female, just for a moment, for a nanosecond, would you not see that we are just human beings, period? Beings,
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And if we have actually, so it happened like 100 years back, 150 years back, okay? When the poor guys were given the authority, okay, now you take care of it. But then we followed suit, right? My question is, we all have experienced that it's not working. So instead of blaming one another and going into paranoia and having all these movements of fighting, and just stop for a moment, seriously, and consider this very simple question: is this working for you? And if not, what are we going to do to change it? So, Pauline, I have to say that I'm so impressed and motivated, inspired, quite honestly, because for the longest time I've actually been talking about the same thing, and now we are here, all of us together, speaking on the same thing. So G100 is a phenomenal, I mean, phenomenal. I'm getting so excited. I can't even speak now. Platform that brings us all together. It's so
Yeah.
cool, so wonderful.
Mm.
And Firoz, I've got to introduce you to so many people here who are from the same mindset. We're gonna rock and roll this positive masculinity. And at the end of the
Absolutely.
day, we are oneness and wisdom. So get
Right.
rid of all this.
And your title says our diversity unites us. I
Exactly.
would also add to that that our diversity makes us stronger,
Yes.
because that is what it's all about. I mean, I am not a whole human without the
Exactly.
female side.
Exactly.
I've been married 50 plus years, and I know I would not have accomplished what I have uh, without my better half. And I think men are not beginning, they have realized whenever a man, and I have had this to experience, there was a time in my career when I had a woman manager and I had 4 women reporting to me as managers. And suddenly I was in the minority. But that's when I started learning that they thought differently, and that
Yes.
the combination of the differences at the end of the day made the whole team very successful. We accomplished more than I would have imagined. So I became more and more biased towards having more women on my management team. And I think as people experience that, and it works both ways, uh, you realize that there are things. Phumza, I think, mentioned that, when there are women involved, they have other concerns and interests that men don't really automatically think of. And we are seeing that, in real fact, where there are countries with women in the cabinet and so on, that it's a kinder, softer approach to the needs of the citizens, for example, right? Especially
Very
marginalized
true.
people and
Very
children
true.
and so on. So we have proof that we do better with a combination, but more importantly, that we need even more leaders, because we've lost out as
Mm,
humanity for all these years by just having the men run the show. The
mm.
more we had, the better the world will be, because we've been missing out on a lot of things. And so I see this getting better and better as more men are experiencing women in the professions and in politics and so on, that eventually it's going to lead us to where we should have been 1,000 years ago. But somehow
We're getting there. We're done. We're getting there, Firoz. So it's okay.
we will. And it'll
Ah,
it'll happen. It'll surprise us
and-
how suddenly it'll happen, I believe, because change happens that way.
mm.
Yes.
This
One of
is
the things I
this
would say, we got very focused on women empowerment. If you take the T off the end, you get women empowerment. Very simple
I
shift.
love that. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
And if we get that harmony, this is an orchestra piece. We're creating music in the world.
exactly.
We need
Exactly.
to understand we need all the violins and the percussion and the brass. We need the singers. We come together. And I think a lot of people just talk about collaboration, but we need to look at the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, the pieces in the orchestra, and understand that it's not only the violins that make it work, or the drums, or the percussion. It's everything together.
Yeah.
Mm.
And one of the things that I'm involved in a lot of foreign policy work and stuff like that interests me. If you look at the cabinets that primarily the men are forming as they get elected into power and so on, a larger and larger percentage of the cabinet is now female.
Yes.
The most recent one being Australia. Half of the cabinet is women, right? Here was a country where it was all a macho, the men rule the roost.
Yes.
And you are seeing that evolution happen, because the people in power realize that they've been missing a big component. After all, half their population is female. So
Which is true.
at the end of the day, they need that kind of the level of insight and different
Yes.
perspectives and so on. But as long as culturally and although I said it is primarily the men, I also see women who are part of
Correct.
the we, where they underestimate their own capabilities and the capabilities of other women.
It's all a wake up. We're all
Yeah,
waking
we
up
have
to
to stop
different
doing that.
possibilities. So
Yeah, because if the women underestimate the capabilities of their own and other women, then we have a bigger problem to
and
deal with. It's
I
not
think
just
what is
educating the men.
I
So
think what's happening, Firoz, is if we can eliminate competition, irrespective of male or female,
right,
amongst females, amongst males, and we actually came from a space of completing one another, we will go a different way. We have got Nicole here, who has actually been behind the scenes. And Nicole, if you would like to come in the focus now and actually share if you've got something to say, because I think you've been actually up to something in the background.
Yeah.
Would you like to share what you've been
Yes,
up to?
I have. This has been such a phenomenal session, I must say. There has been so many pivotal points that came to the fore. And I have several quick takeaways that I would like to share with you. Just starting off simply by having these intelligent conversations or discussions. I think it's very important because a lot of times on online platforms, what you tend to see are the hype, those hyped up conversations, those very biased conversations. But when you can have these calm, intelligent conversations and discussions, it really lends to the thought leadership aspect of things and really getting people to understand different points and really sink their teeth into it. So that was one. Two, uniting the sexes, which is something that some of us touched on today, where it's not a competition between men and women. And I think nowadays you have a lot of instances where women feel as if they have to be in competition with men. They have to show them that they can be just as tough, just as capable. And it's like, we already know, but it's also great to see that men are also joining the narrative to say, hey, listen, we see you, we acknowledge you, we appreciate you, we respect you. So even within my professional life, I am in rooms with very successful men, very powerful men, but I don't feel disrespected, and that is something that is so huge in these 2020s. Another thing that jumped out at me is to understand people who are not like you. Because even for me personally, I'm a leader in different arenas. And a lot of times you have to understand that this particular member or this particular person, they don't think like you, they don't move like you, they don't move like the other members. They come with their own thing. And just recently, I had to think about that with one of my team members on one of the teams that I have, because I was like, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? And then I said, okay, wait, they bring a different thing to the table. They operate differently. So I think that was something that was an aha moment and a reminder for me as well. Also, changes in approaches, which is very important in leadership, because the way things were done in the 50s, it's not necessarily how it's done in these 2020s. And I think a lot of people, especially the older generations, they are a bit resistant to the changes that have to be made. And that is one of the things I try to impart to clients. It's that generational influences are real. And it's something that we definitely have to acknowledge. Another quick one is introverts and extroverts. That's another area that I try to impart on as well, because the introverted and the extroverted world has come to the fore. Everybody talks about, being an introvert or being an extrovert. And those things do impact performance and interactions. So we cannot discount it. We cannot dismiss it. It's something that we really need to look into as well. Women coming into more top tier positions. I also like the fact that men are supporting that. And, you know, Firoz had some examples of that. And it was really great to see, because a lot of times women come into situations or organizations or teams, and they without any experience with the team, they come in feeling already as if they're against the tide, you know, they're against the current. So when you see men embracing them like that and giving them certain positions, it's really encouraging to see. And to thy own self be true, right? That is something I go for. I am all for authenticity. I am all for, you know, breaking the cycles, you know, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life. You don't have to subscribe to everything that has been going on. So I think those are, yes, those are some top things that I see. And one thing to piggyback off of that, it's okay to be ladylike. It's okay to be feminine. You don't have to be rough. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be abrasive. I always say you can be firm without being aggressive, you know, even within your work life. And not because it's a man, you have to come at them in that kind of way. Well, you know, I'm an independent woman. I'm a strong woman. Hear me roar. You know, you don't always have to come with that. You know, you
definitely not.
feminine. Yeah, you can be feminine in everything. Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Nicole, for that.
You are
really
welcome.
cool. I think we all have to really look at things in a totally different way. And
Absolutely.
I think we have started off this conversation, and I don't think this is going to be the last conversation that all of us are going to have. I think we are going to be now invite people from all over. It's just not like one thing and another thing, but we're going to spread our wings literally and friggin' soar. I think that's what we have to get to as a core.
And you know, if I can make a point, over the years in my work career, I saw the initial women leaders who were appointed in roles and so on as we were trying to become more diversified in a large corporation, and they felt that they had to behave like a guy to be appreciated, right?
Yeah.
So they came up with the same gestures, the same swear words, and all those things, because that's what they saw being rewarded in the past. And my advice has always been, do not be like a man. You are unique. You have a different set of talents and skills and perspectives that you must bring to the team.
To the table.
So be yourself. And I think that's when, and I see more and more women doing that in leadership roles, and that's what's adding to the value. The fact that not only are women more capable, but they're becoming more valued because they're behaving with all the intuitions that they already have, that the men don't necessarily have. And I think that is so important that women realize. And that eliminates this idea of competition and, you know, backstabbing and all that over time, because the women are not naturally oriented that way, at least from my perspective.
So to end this amazing conversation, if all of us and everyone who's listening and is going to be listening in the future, if we can eliminate the thought form of competition and really recognize that we all, men and women, can actually come and recognize that we're here to complete one another in every possible way, we will be having different conversations. We will be having a different way the governments work. We'll be having a different way organizations show up, and we'll be having a different world. So having said that, ladies and gent, thank you so much for your valuable time. It has been amazing to have all of you share your thoughts.
Thank you.
And Nicole, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You are most
And God bless.
welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you
gentlemen.
so much.
Everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
God bless.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you to the audience.
You're welcome.
So